good to be back in Chattanooga Valley Presbyterian Church. I think I came here for the first time in the late 90s when Dennis Griffith was here. Dennis and I had graduated from RTS Jackson the same year, and after seminary I ended up as an assistant pastor at Grace Presbyterian Church in Indianapolis. And then when the Lord called us to MTW to go to Turkey, I started raising support, and I called Dennis, and he said, yeah, come on up. And I came, and so yeah, it's been over close to 25 years. Time flies. And but I'm very grateful and thankful for the church, because we could not do what we do unless the church sent us, loved us, cared for us, prayed for us, and partnered with us. And it means a lot to many of us who are overseas serving to know that the church is behind us. The Lord is at work in His world. Belgium is a tough place. So Frank Sindler was standing up here, and he would be talking about Africa. You would see, lots of great stories of people coming to Christ in Belgium. That is not so. But yet the church is alive and well and is growing. And God's people are worshiping the Lord there. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to just briefly, reintroduce the family, talk about what I did as a regional director for Mission to the World, working with global Muslim ministry, and then introducing the new role that I have, which is working with the 1826 network, specifically focusing on Europe, where I'm from and where I live. So here's the family. I've always been very transparent about the family, the needs of my children, and as some of you may be aware, quite a bit of our children struggle coming back to the U.S. And so, but I'm very happy to say that the Lord has been working in their hearts and has been drawing them back to Himself in the church. So Kyle is the oldest. He is now living in Charlotte, working in finances, and is in a steady relationship. Probably spiritually, he is still a bit on the fence, but is in church on occasion. And then next to Kyle is my daughter, Amanda, and Carmela. And Amanda lives in Greenville, South Carolina. We have a home there. And the Lord used her pregnancy to completely bring her back to the faith, into the church. She's a member of Mitchell Road Presbyterian Church in Greenville. And I was able to baptize Carmela not too long ago. And of course is Catalina and I. And then next to us is our son Andrew and his new bride Olivia. They were married December 11th. Andrew is the youngest and also struggled quite a bit, but the Lord really grabbed a hold of him and is about to finish up at Reformation Bible College in Sanford and planning to go to seminary, hopefully either in Jackson, Mississippi, RTS, or Charlotte. But he's doing very well, living in Florida, of course. Then you have Catalina's parents, mom and dad. And then you have my daughter, Katrina, who is married to Admire from Musonga. He's Admire Musonga. He's from Zimbabwe. And they have a little girl called Aaliyah, and they live in Boston. And I will travel to Boston on Wednesday, where I'll be speaking at 2 new churches. So that's the family. Okay, Oudenaarde, Belgium. Oudenaarde is the town where I'm from. I was born in Oudenaarde. And for those of you who are cycling fans, I know something about cycling, Oudenaarde is the town where the Tour of Flanders every year ends. So it's, I'm traveling in the U.S. now. There's a lot more people in cycling, but it's a huge sport. And of course, we live in Ghent. You see, Brussels is the capital. Ghent is straight west. That's where we've been living since 2002. And of course, Belgium is divided in 2 cultures and 2 languages. We have the Flemish-speaking culture, which is Brussels, west and north, and a French-speaking culture, which is to the south. And I was born in a Flemish-speaking culture, so Dutch and Flemish is the same language. We call it Nederlands. And it's a very unique place because Belgium was conquered quite often through its history. And so this is downtown Ghent, and Ghent is a typical medieval city. It was a very powerful city-state at the time of the Reformation. Lots of wealth because of trade. And for about 50 years, Ghent was a Protestant city, was a Calvinistic city, until, of course, the Counter-Reformation swept north from the south and basically destroyed it. And it's taken a long time for a city like Ghent and to regain its economic power again. But the largest immigrant community in Ghent are Turkish speakers, and I'll introduce our Turkish church in just a bit. And they came in the 1960s. And then we have a very large university with many international students. And so we have students from all over the world that come and do masters and PhDs, and who end up in one of our churches, the International Community Church Ghent, which I'll be talking about in just a second. So this is a Turkish mosque, Fatih Cami. Cami is the Turkish word for mosque. And these Turkish mosques are getting bigger and bigger. So when they first came, there were house mosques, but now this particular Turkish mosque, with the help of the government in Turkey, bought an old factory and turned it into a significant mosque. It's very close to our home. We live in a very Turkish area. And you see the two flags, of course, together. And our Turkish pastor has been invited to meet with the imam there. And then this little video is my wife talking about our home, but it's, we'll see if it, let's go back.
And here's our street, very quiet. Right there's our house,
Where we live.
the one with the white garage. And the main road over here.
So, we would be 10 minutes from downtown Ghent by car. So I'll give you a little taste of what a Sunday looks like for us to introduce what we do locally. So we basically work with 3 churches, and so we worship at those churches on Sunday. So we begin with the Gereformeerde Protestantse Kerk Ghent, the Reformed Church Protestant Ghent, which is pastored by Matthew Lemus. And Matthew Lemus has been in Belgium a long time. He used to work with our Turkish church. He speaks fluent Turkish, but he's planting a Flemish-speaking church only. Started about 5 years ago, so I support that work because we have a partnership with IPC Ghent, which is our Turkish work, and I get to preach there once a month in Flemish, which is good practice for me. So that starts at 10 a.m. in the morning, and that we meet in downtown Ghent. We rent a little floor of a house, and then our second worship service starts at 2 o'clock, 2:30 in the same building, and that's our Turkish church. And our pastor there is Murat. You see him with the beard, and you'll hear him in another video shortly. My wife here. This woman next to my wife is the only Turkish woman, Turkish person that's been coming to our church for the last 5 years, and she's a seeker. Most of the people that come are Turkish-speaking Bulgarians, lots of Millet people. But recently, we've had 3 or 4 families come to visit. I haven't been back in a while, but it's a slow-moving work. We're about 20 strong, and we have been for about 10 years. But we keep plugging along together with Murat. And this is a picture that was taken pre-COVID. So my wife teaches English as a second language. She's certified to do that. And we used to have a pretty large group where my wife taught Turkish kids English. And then we would do, projects together with families. And you can see a woman kind of dressed in traditional garb, Muslim garb. That's because when they enter a non-Muslim home, they want to make sure that they are identified as Muslim. And it's been slow going post-COVID to get these things going again. Even though there is no more restrictions, people are still very hesitant to go into people's homes. So that's a little bit about IPC Ghent, the local work. And then we have the International Community Church Ghent, pastored by Leo Proot. So Leo Proot is Flemish. And he's the one that really challenged me to come back to Belgium years ago. And when I initially came back, I helped him plant this church. And it's bilingual, English, Flemish, Flemish, English, lots of international students. And here, this is his ordination service into the IPC years ago. And we have a variety of ministries that we do and are involved in this local church. Now, the one thing that has excited me the most about being back in Belgium all those years is really working with the IPC. And the IPC stands for the International Community Church, and it is a Francis Schaeffer vision. So Francis Schaeffer, when he was in Europe, organizing and getting these Libri centers going, he wanted to plant international Presbyterian churches. And so when we got involved with the International Presbyterian Church in the UK, in the late 90s, it was a very small denomination. But God has been working very powerfully through several Brits that they were able to attract and become pastors there. And so today, we have, I think it's now about 75 to 80 elders. I was just in London to attend Presbyterian Synod, and I saw Garrett's parents there as well, who work with a local church there. And we had, we continue to see visitors come. A lot of Anglicans are now disappointed with where the Anglican Church is going. And some of these conservative Anglicans are, applying to join the IPC. Now, why is it so important? Because of this new concept that I came up with, this new term, the New Europeans. So you have in Belgium, so when I left in '79, the Belgium soccer team looked like this. This is the team that played in the World Cup semifinals in '82. This is the team that played in the World Cup semifinals in 2018, and you see the difference. And so all these men below here are Belgians, but they're not typical Belgians the way I grew up as a Belgian. And so they're new Europeans, they're new kinds of Belgians. And they're not going to be very comfortable in these very traditional churches. They need churches that have a cross-cultural and international vision. And that's why, we need to offer this ethnic diverse community where people like that will feel welcome. And so in Europe right now, we have churches in Belgium, France, Spain, Norway, Poland, Czech Republic, Moldova, Azerbaijan, and Morocco. And we hope to become an established presbytery within the next few years. Okay, now, 1826. Oh, no. So these are the people that I used to work with for Global Muslim Ministry. And you see David and Marcia Jones there that worked with IPC Ealing, Chris and Savannah Kitchen, and they will be going there, hopefully very shortly, to work with IPC Ealing. But quite a few people have had to come home. And this was I also oversaw people in the US, and those were the three couples in the US that did Muslim work. Okay, I'm going to introduce the 1826 network through a video, and then keep going with some more informative slides.
Since Roman times, Belgium has been at the very center of the European experience. First, a military crossroads, then a crossroads for trade and commerce. Belgium has been a meeting place for different cultural experience, different languages, different belief systems. Today, the capital of Belgium, Brussels, is also the capital of Europe. Belgium is a strategic and exciting place.
Antwerp, Brussels, that's Kent again.
Almost 17 years ago, I moved here for working among the Turkish people. Right now, we have a church, IPC Ghent. If you moved here at the beginning, you were starting to thinking that, who am I and what is my identity? I'm not belongs here, but of course I need to live here, but how can I do that for future? At this point, actually, we can easily help the people, but that's really hard for me because of I'm coming from Turkey. I should be like Muslim, like them, you know, but I'm not. When I explain this one that I came from Turkey like you, I feel it at the beginning maybe like you. I can help you by the church and my faith. I can introduce you, but this makes really big explosion. What do you say? I don't know.
I would like to highlight is the need for a relevant, vibrant, authentic church. And the reason why I say that is, one, because we have an opportunity, I think for the first time in Belgium, to reach an international community that is looking for those kinds of churches. And it will allow us to use a church of that nature that's, you know, where the Reformed faith is brought in a winsome way, where there is authentic fellowship to attract the few Belgians that have shown an interest in the gospel. Because Belgians, at this particular point, are very disappointed with church. They're looking for answers. There's a spiritual void here that needs to be met. And I think these authentic, vibrant churches, I think is necessary in order to draw them in order to invite people to the church.
That's the building of the International Community Church.
That is important to us is to help many of these internationals and Belgians to grow in the understanding of how work and faith goes together, how it needs to be integrated. So it's not just a job that they have come to do, but actually they want to be part of the bigger story. They want to connect with God's plan in a sense. That's huge, of course. And we want to help them to develop a biblical framework, an understanding of the storyline, the gospel as such. They understand that work has now been revolutionized. I'm part of God's plan. And so they would go back hopefully to their churches, share what they have been learning here in the process, but now coming back with their endorsement and a growing understanding of their home church, of how it all fits together.
That's the train station in Ghent. Because Belgians, at this particular point, are very disappointed with church. They're looking for answers. There's a spiritual void here that needs to be met.
Just as Belgium is the microcosm of the European experience as a whole, the Belgian church is a microcosm of the Christian battle for the hearts and minds of Europeans from many different cultural backgrounds, from many different ethnic backgrounds. It's the center of what's happening in Europe today spiritually.
Okay. So where does the name 1826 come from? It comes from Acts 1826, where you meet Priscilla and Aquila, and through their vocation, they meet Apollos, who becomes a very powerful preacher in the New Testament. And so Priscilla and Aquila came to Christ in Corinth through the ministry of Paul, and then Paul invites them to come to Ephesus to plant this church. And so that's where the 1826 comes from, this idea that we have to use our vocation as our mission. So the goal then is to make Christ known in every vocational context around the world. And you'll see a little bit later where we have people. I like this quote here by Bishop Ephraim. In order to fill the Great Commission, every believer needs to be a minister, and every workplace a place of ministry. So the word vocation comes from the Latin word, it's a calling. So we are all called to be ministers of the gospel wherever he has, called us and equipped us. So the world is waiting. I mean, there are cities all over the world that are waiting for vocational missionaries. And because traditional missions sent out many church planters and evangelists, but they seldom see people where they spend most of their waking lives at work. So pastors, missionaries, don't get to spend time in the places where people work. But people who are vocational missionaries do. And so it provides a very unique opportunity. And then thousands of young men and women are willing to work overseas, where their living can be witness to Christ's saving grace. We are interviewing people left and right. I just met the Sturkels yesterday. They are very interested in joining 1826 and see what that would look like. It's like we skipped a generation or two with MTW, and we're all retiring. The Chris and Savannah are a kind of a unique couple that we've been able to recruit. We need more of them also. So to be sure, we are a division of Mission to the World. Even though we have our own 501c3, that's because a vocational missionary is not employed by MTW. He's employed by his employer. And so we have our own board of directors. We have our own, vetting process and application process. That's very different from, an MTW missionary like myself. And then we facilitate ministry through network members with local churches and missionary teams, which is what I will do in Europe. So these are the nuts and bolts. Remember, Lloyd, challenged us to think about 1% of the PCA becoming missionaries, and we think we can help achieve that goal through the 1826 network. And we, would like to see these hybrid teams of church planters and vocational missionaries to meet this challenge. And so, that's why, and we're not just focused on the PCA. We're focused on other Reformed and other churches that are interested in sending out 1826 missionaries. So my job is to connect. So we connect vocational missionaries with global ministry partners. So I've been in this job now for about 6 months, and one of the goals that I have is to not only have the IPC become a receiving body for 1826 workers, but is have them start thinking about how they can send themselves 1826 workers. So I'll be focusing on the IPC and the EPCEW, the Evangelical Presbyterian Church of England and Wales, where I have also many connections. And of course, I will be focusing on MTW teams in Europe, search teams in Europe, and as such. Yeah. So connecting people, and then coaching people. You know, some of the people that go will have specific needs. And so we're developing what we call a training schematic that's self-directed for lifelong missionary learning, which is very needs-based and field-based. So MTW teams or other teams would help us inform, how they can help them, culturally as such. We're also in the process of developing what we call a short-term opportunity for college students mainly, which is called Narratives for Life. So, so we all have a narrative, we all have a story that we can tell people. We have a professional story, we have a personal story. And so how do you use your story to be an incarnational witness in the workplace? And so the internship would be designed for college students to start thinking about how do you share your narrative in a cross-cultural context. And so that means you have to learn what your story is. You have to learn what your story is in relationships to God's story in your life, and you have to learn what the story might look like in a place like Belgium. Because as an American, of course, you have to be aware of the Belgium story. So that's kind of, we're probably going to have our first people come the summer of 2024. And then there's the caring aspect of it. As they themselves develop relationships and care for the people that they work with and bring to church, it is, my job is to make sure that they're cared for. And that will depend from couple to couple. Like, for example, when I was talking to the Sturgills yesterday, they had lots of questions about care. How are we going to be cared for? And of course, you're cared for by the local church where you go, but you're also cared for by the church that sends you. And so my work will involve making sure that both the sending church and the receiving church are caring for the 1826 missionaries. Some numbers, we got about 44 people now on the field with 1826 in these places that you see. So Japan has a very large number of people for 1826. And we have 13 people that are in the process to go. And we have about 21 people that are members that are, discerning where they should go. And we have, there are some people that come to us and they have a job and they say, look, I want to use my work to, as a way to support a local ministry. And then we connect them to ministries on the field. We have people that come to us that want to join 1826, but are not quite sure how to find work. And then we kind of put them in contact with people that could help them find work. So that's one of the things Daniel Sturgill asked me to do, is to help him do that. And then we have people who actually work virtually in the US, but they have the strong calling to do that cross-culturally. And there, of course, the challenge is visas, because if you work in the US and you live in a place like Belgium, you need a visa. But we have some people who actually do the work virtually in connection with a local church or an MTW team. And then we have students. We have some students that do a PhD or a master's program at a local European university or elsewhere. and join 1826 in order to be connected to a local church. So how can you be involved? Well, local churches can become more intentional to teach and adopt a theology of work and faith. And we in the PCA, of course, give verbal assent to that, but often we kind of neglect it in a practical way. And men and women with vocational skills can look for global vocal ministry opportunities. And of course, we can pray. We can support it through prayer and encouragement. Okay, one of the things that has happened now that I've with 1826 is I don't have to worry about security anymore. So, so my newsletters are not, secure, sensitive anymore. My cards are not secure, sensitive anymore. So I have some new prayer cards that you can put on your fridge and continue to pray for us. And I also have a business card for those of you who would like more information about 1826. I will put those in the narthex there for you to have. Before I open the question, how many of you receive our prayer letters, our newsletters? You do? Okay. If you want to receive our newsletter, I'll leave a sheet of paper here so you can sign up for it and so you can be informed about what's going on. I don't know how much time we have left or... 15 minutes. Okay. Go ahead. Ask any kind of question you would like.
From being in America and being in Belgium, well, being from Belgium, culturally, like, are there differences in how you evangelize? Like, are there things that you learn from one culture or the other that
Oh, yes.
is effective?
Yeah, so Belgians are, because we are a Catholic culture, even though we're rejected Catholicism as a people group, we're still very much a Catholic culture. And so because of that, we are suspicious, we're quiet, we will take our time getting to know people. So any kind of evangelism will take time, and you need to build relationships slowly. So when I moved to the U.S. in '79 as a 19-year-old, I remember this very vividly. Within 2 days of moving, we had 2 neighbors come to our house with cookies. That would never happen in Belgium. And so, if you as an American would take cookies to a Belgian home after having moved there, they would not even open the door. So in that sense, you need to be very patient, intentional about building relationships. So that's a cultural difference. Another cultural difference would be, for example, Belgium, for European standards, is high-power distance culture. So high-power distance culture is a culture where authority is respected. You don't challenge authority. So we grew up in that culture. So when the teacher says, you're going to solve the math problem this way, you solve the math problem this way. Americans, that's very different. They have grown up in a very low power distance culture. You are actually encouraged to challenge authority and to think for yourself. So for Americans that's often, it takes a while before they understand that that's a cultural difference you need to have. And of course in Asia, it's even worse. Asian culture have a very high power distance kind of culture. So, and then of course, when I first came back to Belgium to do evangelism, I worked with OM Belgium, and we did a lot of street evangelism, tracking, miming, sketchboarding, all that kind of stuff. You can't do that anymore. Because of the terrorist attacks in Belgium, they have gotten very strict about those kinds of things, and you need to apply for everything. So the two churches, the Turkish church and the Flemish church that I talked to you about, we're in a process of applying for a space in the marketplace so we can have a book table. And but even if you do a book table now, you cannot actually take the books to the people. They have to come to you. I don't know if that's the same in London. I don't think so, because his dad does a book table. He's great at book table, and but so so in that sense, it's quite challenging to do evangelism. So you get to do it very relationally. Yeah. Any other questions? Yes, sir. Yeah, I mean, it's changing Belgium, and because when I left in '79, you saw very few foreigners, and when I came back in 2002, there were you turned left and right, and you saw people from Africa, Turkish culture, Turkish people, Moroccan people. So it continues to change. I think the greatest tension that I see now, because of the rapid immigration, is we have more of a political right that is becoming stronger and more vocal, and that's more focused on, okay, we're Flemish, we want to remain Flemish, we want to respect our culture, and you see that all across Europe. You see it in France with Le Pen always doing very good in the elections. So there is this growing kind of right that's getting stronger and stronger. And now, with the economy beginning to struggle, now especially because we're in Ukraine, our gas and electrical bill is tripled. Because Belgium, because of the green people, got rid of all their what do you call those places that produce electricity, energy? Yeah, power plants. They got rid of all the power plants, and so so we're so as the economy begins to struggle, I think we're going to see more and more of disgruntled Flemish people voting right, and that's historically has always been not such a good thing for Europe. So so that's one of the impacts. But on the other one, all my sons, like Andrew's best friends, are Turks or Moroccans. A lot of them, these new Belgians, like when he got married, Mohammed came as the best man, and so there are positives. Well, not most of the people that are Muslim in Europe are not terrorists. They want to live a happy life. They want their kids to be happy. But you do have these fractions of very radical people there.
Growing up in Turkey, Turks are not that way at all. They are the opposite. So how has ministry looked as far as? I noticed it seems like there has been a struggle to bring Turks into the church. What do you think is caused some of that? Just as far as trying to when I think Turks are usually excited, engage people that are speak my language, start talking. What has led to some of the difficulties?
Well, I think the bigger challenge for Turks living outside of Turkey is that they are, the saying goes, to be a Muslim is to be a Turk is to be a Muslim. And so when they're out of their Turkey, they just, they form these enclaves. And Turks are very smart. They have they're very industrious. And so the Turkish people in Belgium have bought lots of homes. They're strong in business, but they're still that community. And even though, you know, these second and third generation people that are born there in Turkish families and speak fluent Flemish or French still speak Turkish, still align themselves with the mosque. Even they may have a very kind of soft Islam experience. And so, you know, and so for them to leave that community or to step aside and maybe attend a Turkish church like Murat's church would be very visible, because it'd be very hard not to be seen. So there was a lot of, you know, cultural pressure that keeps them together. Very, very difficult. And so, you know, where Murat has had the biggest impact is when he was doing a business as missions in Belgium. Well, we had to close that now, but we're trying to, because he also just joined 1826, we're trying to see if we can get him involved in a vocation, because he was able to reach so many people, talk to so many people. But that's the hardest part. It was much easier to live in Turkey and talk to Turks in Turkey than it is in Belgium. Yeah, except if you're your dad. Yeah. He can talk to anybody. So, you had a question? Are you?
I think you answered it already. I was just thinking about the two churches. Mm-hmm. And I think you said there's like a Flemish service and a Turkish service. But I was wondering about, do those two bodies ever come together? And if not, what are the barriers?
Yeah, those two bodies are very committed to each other. So we have kind of a partnership. So a few weeks ago, Murat preached in the Flemish church, and it was translated by Matthew, and had a big dinner afterwards. And so, yeah, so those two congregations actually, you know, meet about every 4 months together for worship. And now we're trying to involve the international church as well, so we can be a little more intentional what we can do together. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Are Muslims as evangelistic as Christian? And it would seem that in, I don't know, world history or something, we've got Muslim versus Christian conflict going on. And is the idea of Presbyterian and Reform helpful, hurtful, versus we're Christians?
Okay, let me answer the two questions. So, do Muslims evangelize? The question is yes. The key to Muslim evangelism is always the mosque. Everything happens out and flows from the mosque, because a mosque is more than just a religious. It's where people come to worship. It's where everybody meets. It's where they have shops. They do all kinds of cultural events. And mosques have been growing in Belgium. And not too long ago, before I came back to the US, I visited several mosques, and they are very well organized. They offer, you know, classes for people in the neighborhood. I mean, they try to attract as many Belgians as they can in the social activities that they organize. And that's how they evangelize. So it's very intentional. So I do think that Islam has the goal to turn Europe into Islam. Will they ever be successful? I don't know. They've tried before through the sword, but, you know, were defeated. But, you know, there is that intention. The thing about Presbyterianism, because I, you know, when people ask me, because I'm Belgian, they say, what is Protestantism? What is Presbyterianism? It gives me a great opportunity, because once they ask the question, they're inviting you to share. And I can share a bit about the history of Presbyterianism and about, you know, the need for historical Christianity, Protestant Christianity, what's defined in confessions, Belgium's like that idea of confessions because it's structural. They can place that in history, you know, with John Knox and all that kind of stuff. And then you can talk about, I often introduce then the Dutch arm of Protestantism, you know, all the Reformed, like the Heidelberg Catechisms and stuff. And so that's not so much of a barrier. It's actually more of a plus for us because it's completely different from Roman Catholicism. And you know, and they want to make sure that it's nothing to do with Roman Catholicism. So, yeah. Does that answer your question? Or?
So vibrant and authentic are under a more authority-driven approach?
Well, what I mean by vibrant and authentic is the fellowship themselves. You know, Belgians go to a Catholic church, and you know, and it's something that they have to do. There is no meaningful relationships in the body. And so when you come to IPC Ghent, for example, in the Universal Church, you know, Leo makes soup every day after church. So people hang around for an hour and a half after the service. And there's, you know, and we do all kinds of relational activities. That's what we mean by authentic. It needs to be Christianity lived out.
So this whole thing that we have here is global in the sense of people looking for community and one another to human beings.
Yes, and that's a good comparison. Yeah. So, how much? 1 more minute. Well, thank you so much for having me. It's really a blessing to be back. And yeah, God bless you. So, sure.
Dear Father, thank you so much. Incredible work that you've done in their lives and your faithfulness to them across many years. I thank you for the relationship faithfulness we have to our church, to the Northern College. 25 years of that. Your blessing, using us to bless them, blessing them to bless us. Come and share their work with us. I pray for Tom and for his children, and for those that have walked away with you, help bring them back into your embrace. Worship and thank you for the ways that you've already made that clear, and for your faithfulness to his family. Thank you for your work that you are doing through the IPC in Belgium and England and Europe. Lord, I pray that you continue to bless the churches there in Ghent, and that they would continue to see growth, and you would help break down those barriers, Lord, that are preventing Belgians and the Turks from attending and building those meaningful, vibrant relationships that are offered through your love there. Lord, you are so much bigger than anything that could hold you. So I pray, Lord, that you begin the churches there. I hope that you begin, as you already have given, faithfulness as they continue to reach out and work for you, Lord. And out of that, we would see a beautiful explosion of your word and the growth of your churches there, Lord. And that we would have time to come back here in years and be able to, we would be able to celebrate with him in the incredible work. I pray for his new work, Lord, his network, that you would bless that work as it grows, as they thank you for your faithfulness in giving them all of these applications, all these people that are interested in that work, Lord. May you help that growth continue, may that enthusiasm continue. I pray that as they put more and more structures in place, that they would be able, that the organization would be able to support those individuals as well, and that they would be able to see the effectiveness of that vocational ministry. And again, give us things on that. I pray that you would help us here at UBC, that we learn from this to see our own responsibilities to vocational ministry, Lord. You have not called us to be Christians and workers with that word. We would integrate those, and that we would see your name praised, and that your kingdom grow even here.